Hello, I'm Sam, and I will be presenting on the Ordering of Moses by Nathaniel Dett today. Yeah, so please enjoy. So already right away, we can see that the cello starts at the piece, and it comes in with this groggy motion of low notes. It feels very warm yet still secluded, and it passes on this melody perfectly to the bassoon soloist. And right when this happens, the violas and clarinets come in, and this helps support this nice and extroverted bassoon solo. Um, and yeah, this transition is super good because cello and bassoon are very similar, and it's just a very smooth transition. So after this brief pause, the cello comes in again, and the bassoon takes the solo again. And this starts to have the piece build more and more and more. And the bassoon solo starts to gain more support from the brass and the winds. Um, it's kind of like an ominous feeling, and the bassoons are really supported by a lot of brass and woodwinds, like kind of talking back and forth. And then all of a sudden, you'll hear like these tickles in the strings, and like the high register, and you think something's gonna happen, but then the bassoon comes back, and it's still this ominous feeling. But soon the energy starts to build again, and it kind of gets interrupted though by the whole orchestra joining in these abrupt, short eighth notes. But it helps lead in to the next section. After the orchestra hits these eighth notes, they play these super warm harmonies in the winds and brass, and it really helps set up these notes that the harp have leading up to this cello solo. The harp perfectly passes on this section to the cello solo, and this cello solo is so exposed. It lasts for more than a whole page without anything written around it, and it is so good. It has so much direction, and it pushes you to the next section, which is these very lush chords in the winds, brass, and the strings. Soon you'll hear the cello solo come back, though, after the harp fully hits this C major chord, and the cello bounces off of that in these C major arpeggios to then give you this very abrasive, striking chord in the orchestra to help pass on to the vocalist. And this vocalist comes in also alone, like the bassoon and the cello, and it is so beautiful. When I first started looking at this, I was noticing right away the similarities between the parts of bassoon and cello, for example. And when I saw that this vocalist comes in alone with a striking low melody, I was like, this is those solos in the beginning were almost teasers of this vocal entrance coming in, and hearing the vocal come in, it's almost like I expected it without even knowing I expected it. It was an awesome feeling, and then the vocalist keeps going, and he continues to go back and forth between singing alone and having the orchestra and the rest of the choir um, talk back to him. It's like a conversation, like the instruments have been kind of doing throughout the rest of the piece, you know. So the choir continues to build tension with the orchestra going back and forth with this conversational feeling, and soon everything drops and this alto soloist comes in. You expect it to be alone, but very soon the oboe follows it just a couple notes after, and this is like when the cello and the tenor were singing together. It was almost like they were having a conversation at the same time, and you can hear these ideas related so clearly, but soon the vocalist and the oboe go into unison together, and this is for the first time in the whole piece. Watch for the unison here. The vocalist and the oboe soon hit this low register note, and it slowly starts to even morph into a more conversational aspect than it was before it was unison. Um, Now there is much more complex motion between the two voices, and there are snippets of um, other aspects in the strings, brass or winds that are thrown in to accentuate certain words or certain back and forth motions between the oboe and the alto, and it really sounds great. It really sounds like two people talking at the same time. Coming up on the next page, the bassoon solo is going to enter again, but a lot more subtly within the texture, and this continues for a solid chunk. And I think that this maybe indicates that both the vocalists will sing together soon, and I think this because the bassoon and the oboe play together, and this is kind of telling you, oh, maybe tenor alto sort of thing gonna happen, and there's this building of tension back and forth between the "Oh Lord" phrases, so I feel like something's gonna happen. So the more that this part builds up, the back and forth between the vocalist and the orchestra, um, it feels as though the momentum is kind of just lingering. There's a lot of ethereal feelings, and it's kind of just floating in space. But soon everyone drops out of the orchestra except the soloists and the strings, and they're playing this fast tremolo. And I squared that in blue, so watch when that comes. But that is just something that caught my eye. That it's an intense part, and it's separate from this repeating pattern that keeps going. Um, and so it's just something that I think is brought out, and maybe just for emphasis on this sighing part. The choir builds and builds with the soloist until the soloist hits this note, and then helps build to this next section where there's this fast motion of notes that helps bring upward motion to make it louder and more out there. And there's a lot more energy in this section. And then the cello comes back out of nowhere. When the cello initially comes back, I thought possibly the tenor voice is going to come back. Or then I heard the violas do this pizzicato note here at the end of this cello solo, and I thought, well, maybe that's saying, oh, we're here, and maybe the violas will join. So in this next section, the violas and celli play this super awesome rhythmic idea that is just such lush, beautiful harmony. But there is this French horn solo on top of it. And so we could say that there are three parts playing together at this part that kind of play off of each other. And the first two solo voices come back, and a third voice comes in as well, right after these three parts play their own solos in the instruments. So it's kind of saying like, oh, you get the idea with the instruments, so now it's going to happen with the voices as well. And it's kind of happened the whole piece, and now you can see here in this yellow box that the voices do come in three parts. So I hope you all have enjoyed learning a little bit more about this piece, and this is just a little bit of an introduction to it, so go listen to the rest of the half hour of the rest of the piece. It's pretty dang good, and I'm sure that you guys will enjoy it. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys learned something.